Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
I welcome you to today's program. Today we're going to discuss a medical question, and we are very appreciative for you being with us. This is a rather interesting and complex question and involves new research that, as many topics are controversial. We're very pleased to welcome to the program Mr. Kurt Newby, who is a lecturer and a spokesperson dealing with this subject, and he travels around the country. A lot of this research has come from what is called quantum research incorporated in Scottsdale, Arizona, and a medical doctor that is very much advocate of this approach is Dr. Jesse A. Stoff, and Mr. Newby is very familiar with his work. Mr. Newby, welcome to our program, and I should say in welcoming you that we want to talk about immune therapy and dealing with chronic illnesses, and I know Dr. Stoff's work is that I have before me what was given to us 107 of his patients and what's happened. And again, we want to take all the time to deal with your approach to this question. And again, welcome. And at the same time, I welcome Janelle Burke, our regular panelist, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho. And Janelle will start our questioning with guest Mr. Kurt Newby.
Well, thank you for having me here, first off.
Mr. Newby, you're talking to someone now who doesn't know very much about this particular matter. So can you explain to us and to the viewers what the immune system is and what it does or why it's important?
Well, the immune system is obviously very important. That's what keeps us all alive. And we should probably, at least for the viewers, explain the term immunotherapy.
Yes.
I mean, that just simply means
correct.
Immune system therapy. I mean, it's very simple. And if you can grasp the idea, and I always have trouble, it's kind of a strange concept for people to understand, but I always, usually whether it's a talk show or whatever I'm talking about, on TV, always start out with this concept. First we get neurological disorders out of the way, then you get birth defects and some genetic disorders, get those things out of the way, then you come back in with this statement. There is no such thing as disease. Now that startles people for a minute. And you think about that. That when you're talking about cancer, when you're talking about hep C, when you're coughing colds, flus, all of these different things, those are not diseases. Those are simply outward manifestations of an immune system that has gone awry. Now, I'll guarantee you there's a terrible difference between a common cold than there is cancer. But somewhere there's a hole in that immune system. It's not modulating properly to be able to address those problems. And that's the topic that I lecture on. And those are, of course, Dr. Stoff with his research. He's one of the top viral immunologists in the world. He started out as a medical doctor, got interested in immunotherapy, then became a viral immunologist that has treated thousands and thousands of chronically ill people, not by addressing the disease. It's interesting to note that he goes back in and addresses the immune system, restores immune modulation, and then, of course, that symptom, the disease, just simply disappears, and that's true also even with cancer.
So what you're saying is basically, if we have a healthy immune system, we're going to be a healthy individual.
Absolutely.
And that's the premise off which you work.
Sure, and that's the premises of which you're sitting there today. Healthy immune system, therefore you're healthy. It's the only difference between a healthy individual and a sick individual. One's immune system's working properly, and the other one has malfunctioned. Just like when your automobile doesn't start in the morning, there's something gone wrong. And when you're talking about going back into being an immunotherapist, then you're going back into modulating that problem, going back into addressing why your car didn't start, and fix it, and then, of course, off to work you go. And that's very simplistic. But the breakthrough is actually came that to give us an understanding is what is going on. In our topic, when I talk and when Dr. Jesse Stoff is talking, he's going to be addressing this new term that's going to be very new to virtually everybody. Probably 99.9% of the doctors are not very familiar with this area simply because the research is that new. And we're addressing something called a natural killer cell. It's a completely separate part of the immune system that we didn't even realize existed. You can just kind of picture it as, it's going to be tough for people to understand. Understand in your mind, and it's not really true, they're connected, but just put in your mind, just to make it simplistic, that over here you've got this immune system that we've always understood made up of the cytokines and the macrophage and the T4 cells and the helper cells and B cells. But over here, unbeknownst to anybody, we've got what I refer to as a palace guard. This is a totally separate immune system, runs on its own. They're target specific. Each natural killer cell is target specific for each individual types of cancers. Let's say that the CD2 is target specific for melanomas. We got a CD3 for carcinomas. Each one is target specific for its type of cancers and so many viruses. They're born in the bone stem like any cell, trained in thymus. They just slip into the fatty side of the blood and they float along. I just try to explain to people that just picture them like, and it's not really true, but just picture them like an inner tube. Float along down the river, and they'll slip up alongside a cancer cell. Let's say it's a carcinoma of some kind, and then they'll knock on the door. And they say, pardon me, friend, I don't think I've seen you here before. Can I card you? Have you got some idea? Prove that you're supposed to be here? And, of course, that natural killer cell or that cancer cell will say, well, really, no, I don't. So that NK cell then will say, fine. They pull along behind them about 100 different chemicals. They'll mix that together, shoot it into the side of that cell, and the cell explodes. I mean, that's what's going on at a high rate of speed in all of individuals every day, but that's exactly how it works. But the strange part is the natural killer cell profile test that they could do here at a hospital anywhere in the Northwest identifies these. It tells you how many natural killer cells you have in that blood sample. It doesn't tell you what they're doing. The research, the Nobel Prizes through the 70s, and all the research is up till the 90s. Then in 1990, immunoscience laboratories came out with a new test. It's called an NK function test. It's done with radioactive chromium. There's only 3 laboratories in the United States that do these presently. Now we can go back in and see how many, let's say that you, either one of you, each had 200 natural killer cells in that blood sample. I draw that blood. I test it. I go back in and I find out how many of these things are still target specific. I don't care how many you have. I want to know how many of them are still active and doing what they're supposed to be. The scary part is we now know that we should have 150 to 225 in a healthy society. The new norm in the United States has dropped down to running between 20 to 50. In other words, 75 to 90% shutdown of this NK function part of our immune system, and I just refer to them that, so people understand them, just refer to these natural killer cells have Alzheimer's. They can't identify their target anymore.
You said some things before we started the program that were very disturbing. And I'd like for you to share with the viewers. You've indicated that from you who are advocating this approach to treatment and understanding it, that in, I believe, 1950, 1 in 50 people had acquired cancer, and it was a serious problem, and now it's 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 2 men. Would you talk a little bit about what you think has gone wrong? I know you're critical of chemotherapy and radiation, and that we're also losing our immune system to antibiotics, although they've been tremendous help. Would you just share with us, from your perspective, what you think is happening?
Well, and I think everybody pretty much understands anymore. I mean, we see headlines every day that we're getting in serious trouble working with antibiotics. I mean, the Center for Disease Control, 1997, discusses that on the web and says we're concerned with the post-antibiotic era. That just simply means it's over. And then if you saw Fox News during the holidays, there was another headline in there that they were worried about, here we are, we made this, and antibiotics were godsend at one time. Mm-hmm. My God, they looked like the answer to everything. Nobody knew that what was going to happen. Nobody realized that these things that are so small that we can't see, in their infinite wisdom, could mount a defense and say, now wait a minute. We've all been here together before, and we're going to stay here. So they started mounting a defense. So the antibiotics got stronger, the bugs got stronger, the antibiotics got stronger, and finally we reached a point we can no longer build any stronger antibiotics. At least we can today. Now we have bugs out there we can't kill. Now that's a dangerous situation. So one of the Fox News headlines during the holidays was, we are rapidly entering a pre-antibiotic era. Now that in itself is dangerous enough, except then the antibiotic by its very nature is an immune system suppressor. So here for 60 years, and people don't understand that this, what we call conventional medicine, hasn't always been this way. Immunotherapy has been the way medicine has always been treated before, is working with the immune system, although it was pretty primitive. But I mean, when we came to this country and we had the Native Americans with their witch doctors with their herbs, actually using those herbs were, of course, they were certainly not too scientific, but they were immunologists. But what we've done is went off on this sidetrack that looked so wonderful, and now it's simply coming back to haunt us. So we've been slowly dismantling the immune system over here so that we can't defend ourselves and made these bugs stronger. But really, what is really crazy is this part of the immune system, the natural killer cells, that we didn't even know existed. So it's not anybody's fault. Here we got a new discovery of a part of the immune system, and we find out the very treatment we've been doing is dismantling these guys, and these guys are the palace guard. And when you can, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if we completely dismantle NK function, civilization's out of here. I mean, that's pretty simplistic. I mean, it's a pretty scary approach, but it's absolutely 100% given that we have got to alter course. They've been telling us for years now, we've got to quit playing with these antibiotics. We've got to make this switch into immune system modulation and bring these immune systems back up where they belong.
If the immune system is destroyed, then of course disease would take people quickly. You wouldn't have any ability to fight it. Talk about Dr. Jesse Stoff's work. One of the questions I asked you before on the air was, now that you're indicating that we have this other immune system that's so important and we need to restore it according to the position that this research indicates, what is Dr. Stoff and others doing how do they take a patient that has, for example, either cancer or has lupus or some kind of fatigue syndrome? What kind of treatments is he using that's not the path we've had with antibiotics, so forth?
Well, now Dr. Stoff will always, I mean, he's a regular MD, so what he can use from conventional medicine,
he will
combine,
use.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see the marriage of the two down the road here.
Okay.
But what he can use of that is to his benefit, to keep somebody alive while he's modulating the immune system, that is what he'll do. People have to understand that when we're talking about immunotherapy in this new technology, I'm not talking about alternative medicine. Immunotherapy and modulating the immune system is conventional medicine's final frontier. I mean, all we're doing is we've developed some new blood tests, we found out some new things, and we're advancing forward. Just simply new research. So when there's new research, there's always
So he's
resistance.
combining that with what the
Sure.
treatments are. They're like antibiotics and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's all combined.
Okay.
But he tries to, if possible, use nothing that is toxic to go back in and restore that immune modulation and restore that
Now, then,
problem.
what we need to do is to get into some of the things he does to restore that immune system. I know before the show, again, you were talking with us about, I believe, in some of the research that they're using cows as part of the research and what they're doing. For we lay persons that don't understand some of the terms that you're using, but you're articulating very clearly, give us specifics of what that research is and how then he and others use that with the patient.
Okay, let's go back to everybody knows that we always work with animals with research. That's always been done. In the beginning, working with what we're talking about, when you go back to the Nobel Prizes offered between 1973 and 1975 with research with natural killer cells, Ralph Zingemangle and Peter Daugherty actually used mice there. Let me explain to you about a natural killer cell. It's like doing a transfer. If you do a heart transplant and transfer it to somebody else, it won't operate, right? You've got to be on an immune system suppressor or that body organism will reject the heart. It's the same way with a natural killer cell. You cannot take natural killer cells that have NK function that are target specific and accumulate those from a human healthy individual and transfer those to another one. They will not operate outside their own habitat, outside the human body of which they were born. And that's what that was a breakthrough that the two scientists from 73 to 75 discovered. They were target specific, would only function inside the mammal in which they were born. So you can't do a transplant. So we now know that low NK function is a cause of all these problems. So now somebody had to come up with a way to go back in and re-educate these natural killer cells, just like, you're going to have to send them to college, but you've got to send them to college in the dwelling where they were raised. You can't send them across country and go to another college. They've got to go to that one at the hometown. So what they have done is they have, over years, and first thing they did is they took cattle off to all antibiotics and no synthetic feeds. Then they cleaned up a herd for several generations. Then what they have done is they've taken these super germs. Now you have to understand, while all of this research is going on, still nobody knows about natural killer cells. They're just trying to address the issue of super bugs, super bacteria. So they kill these germs, they slip into the udder of the cow, and then that cow will build, of course, an antibody to protect her offspring from something that didn't used to be here. Where does this thing come from? Because she's just fenced in her pasture, right? Now she gets introduced to a super germ that you and I have created with the use of antibiotics. So in her infinite wisdom, to make sure that her offspring stays on planet Earth even if mankind disappears for whatever reason, she has built some completely new, what I call just classify them as a messenger molecule, which is not what they are. They call it a antigenically infused extract, and there's all kinds of things in there that go back in and modulate that immune system. So you can take somebody that's on $500 a day and we do it, I've done it several times in the last month myself, somebody with a staph infection that they cannot kill with anything, $500 a day of antibiotics, go back in and modulate that immune system and bring that immune system back up, and in a matter of 5-10 days, kill that staph and go on normally. But the great part is it's an immune system modulator. It's the only modulator in the world. The double-blind studies have been out for a week now. It will modulate the immune system back to the norm. Doesn't matter if it's cancer or MS. It modulates back to the norm. Will not do any more or any less. But the great thing is now understanding these natural killer cells, it re-educates those, and then if you can work through immune modulation, you can raise these natural killer cells to extremely high levels and let those go back in and correct the situation.
Now, once the cow develops the system, talk just a little bit about extracting that from the cow and how then
how they do that,
and how they give that to the human being.
Now, as far as how it's all patented research for 54 years, so I have not a clue the scientists or the science behind how it's done. I can explain to you that once they've harvested those come back to you just like any other kind of pill. You just take one, just like taking an antibiotic, only this is an immune modulator and restores immune function.
It's always in pill form.
Sure, except that they do have it also in a spray for people that have, like these children with the horrible otitis media, there are 35 to 45 million of them, and it's very simple to correct that problem. For sinus infections, that antigenically infused molecule, you can go back in and kill that instantly, about that quick.
Janelle Berg.
Tell me, Mr. Newby, are there a lot of doctors who are practicing this particular kind of medicine?
Well, no, they're going to have to. I mean, I don't know if we mentioned it while we were talking now, but UC Berkeley is now got classes teaching. I finally ran into the first doctor in a year and a half, actually, that understood natural killer cells, and he just graduated 9 months ago from UC Berkeley. He understands each natural killer cell, what they're target specific for, understands how they operate, right down the line, just bang, bang, bang. I mean, he learned it well. He could quote it off to me just like reading out of a book. So I was pretty fascinated when I talked to him after a lecture one night. So it's finally, the research has been, enough of it has been compiled. It is now in the medical books and being taught. But so these doctors out here, unfortunately, I mean, it's to me, I think it should be a refresher course that maybe we're going to have to take segments of the medical field and send them back to give them this kind of understanding so we can make this shift. Obviously, if we know we got the problem, now we're having a few doctors finally come out of UC Berkeley understanding this, but we got a whole population of people that are in serious trouble. So the thing that I try to do is, if you look in the PDR, the Physician's Desk Reference, when it talks about it, about the OSF+, it explains that not only is it a great treatment for recovery from serious illness, the great part is, and this is the part that I'm trying to get across to people, is that we know the problem. So the great thing is, the great part of this breakthrough is we can defend ourselves. We can now bring this immune system back online before we have generations of folks our age that, we finally make it to retirement age and think, hot dog, we're going to have some great years. And by that time, you got so many chronic problems that all you want to do is sit in the sun and look out the window.
So basically, you're saying it can be preventive as well as trying to help someone who already has the disease overcome that disease.
Sure.
So are you going to take different kinds of medications?
Different amounts.
Different amounts.
Different amounts.
But the same kind of medication.
And it's not medication. It's immune modulation. And maybe, I don't know if you saw it on the news or not. February 3rd, the World Health Organization came out with this statement. This year 2000. World faces a quote-unquote cancer epidemic. Now, is that a crazy statement? That's pretty scary, isn't it? But if you go back up in that report, it says we can not only, this is a quote, we can not only teach or treat cancer better, but we can also certainly teach future generations from getting a vast majority of these cancers. And that's why I travel country lecturing, that we can do that. But it takes self-discipline. It takes a little, what do we want to call it? What's the proper word? Help me out.
I'm not sure where you're going with that.
Well, isn't that terrible? Can't come up with a self-discipline, and we got to, where else can you pass that responsibility on to? If we know that we have a problem, and we know how to address it, whose responsibility is it to address that if you know how to do that?
Individual responsibility.
Individual responsibility. I knew somebody come up with the right word. I couldn't make it. Thank you. And that's what we have to do, because there's such a gap between what we know now and where we are as far as the number of these viral immunologists around to treat people. There's a big gap there. And this is now being just taught. So who's going to fill this? It's going to take the American public to help out here a little. Let's get online and get educated up. And
so there's examples like, for example, smoking we know has real detrimental effect like lung cancer and so forth. So there's a number of things individuals can do in addition to what you are talking about, this breakthroughs, to help in that process.
It's fascinating to think about, and I was certainly one of them, and I'll bet you that you know somebody that's one of them. How many people you see out there that you classify as just a real health nut? They got a semi-load of vitamins and minerals in the backyard. They run 5 miles before breakfast. They got half a dozen exercise machines in the garage, one in the front room, a new one coming from Sears and Roebuck on their credit card. And they've done all these things. We're now paying more for a quart of water than the poor farmer gets for a quart of milk. Has it changed anything? No. Disease is going through the roof. And crazier than that, I've watched it in my own family. I had an aunt that was a total health nut, did everything right all over life, and died of lung cancer. I had a father-in-law, on the other hand, who did everything wrong all his life, smoked 3 packs of unfiltered cigarettes a day from the time he was 13. And when he got a checkup at age 75, they patted him on the back for never smoking. See, so this is the strange
so his
part.
Immune system has
That's
worked
right.
Better.
Yeah, so his NK function was good, Catherine's NK function was bad, and that's what the studies have now proven, and that's definitely what the double blinds have now proven, that when the immune system, you can stimulate an immune system on this side, and you will run it down on the other side, and so you have to modulate the whole system. Actually, 3 segments of the immune system that you modulate and bring back online to put this communication back with the immune system and then eradicate these diseases.
That's what that research and these treatments are all about. Before the time is up, another thing that you mentioned, you said there was 3 centers in America that were using this research. Was the Mayo Clinic one of those?
No, I didn't say I said there were 3 laboratories that could do an NK function test.
And where are those laboratories at?
There's 2 of them in California and 1 of them in New Jersey, and I'm not sure, but I believe possibly out here at the University of Washington that they're doing NK function tests now, and there will be a new one online in Tucson, Arizona, first part of February.
So medical doctors that want to know about this, is there a way that we could they can identify these more specific, other than the 2 in California and one's coming on in Arizona? I mean, where would
you mean the laboratories?
Yeah.
Well, you can draw blood here in Spokane,
right,
your doctor, and have it sent.
But the doctors have to know where to send it.
Yes, and we normally always, when we lecture, and give that information out anyways.
Can you do that?
Especially labs.
Can you do that?
Well, unfortunately, especially labs out of California, but I don't even have their phone number with me. I'm sorry about that.
In case I get calls, would you be able to provide those for me so that I can share them?
Sure.
If you do that.
And they can, the doctor, the laboratory actually won't know anything about it. You just take the instructions with them, and it tells them how the blood has to be drawn. The big thing is it has to be overnight expedited. Like if you draw it here at noon today, it has to be on the laboratory steps at 8 o'clock in the morning. It has to be tested within the first 24 hours.
A group that contacted me about you being on the show was HealthLink of Montana. Are you associated with them? Or
yes, that's the title I lecture under across the country.
Okay. And we do have their telephone number and for information. And maybe I'll give that because I just want to be helpful, if I may. And then we'll go back to Janelle a little time after that. But the HealthLink number of Montana is 1-800-987-7647. Are there medical people that involved with the HealthLink in Montana?
No, we just lecture and supply the information
from what you've heard on this.
And if somebody needs, somebody wants this type of treatment, we certainly give them access to talk to one of the doctors. We're kind of as a middle person.
Right. Janelle Burke.
One of the things that I was concerned about, or I am concerned about, is the person who presents to the doctor and who's very sick at that time. Obviously, they're going to need various kinds of treatment. And what you're saying is that your treatment is not an alternative to that treatment, but it's a supplement to that treatment. Is that correct?
It's complementary.
And so how can you give us some examples of diseases, or you're saying they aren't diseases actually, I suppose, but some kinds of illnesses that people might present with and how they would be treated with your program?
Now you can list any disease that you want that starts on the inside. And this is the thing that's dangerous, is those diseases that start on the inside are so far ahead of you before the outward manifestation shows up. So it will always be, if it's not necessary. If it is not necessary, and you have, if you got 6 months or 9 months or something to live, there will be, normally, if your immune system will respond, no intervention other than immune modulation to bring that immune system back online. If there's somebody, let's take in case of a severe advanced breast cancer or something, then you're going to have to use some radiation conventional medicine somewhere, because you cannot bring an immune system back to life that quick. If you look at the studies, the average treatment time for immune modulation for the disease to end up back in remission where it's supposed to be, which is what your immune system does, we refer to as curing things. But if you really think about your immune system, it only keeps all disease in remission. I mean, you're breathing in bugs and bacteria and viruses every day. You got staph all over your arms. Everything's just kept in remission. Same with cancer.
So how long is this average time?
Average treatment time of those sick individuals is 13.2 months, but that doesn't mean they're in the hospital. It means the situation is addressed, they are given the directives, the protocols that they must follow, and then they simply go on working. Because it's non-invasive, it doesn't make you sick, so you just carry on.
On that note, I can bring the program to conclusion. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Mr. Newby, Kurt Newby, thank you for being with us, and Janelle, thank you for your fine questions. It's been most informative having you here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's been fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we've been discussing an important medical question, and that is dealing with the immune system and immune therapy. And the work that Mr. Newby's been talking about is research that is taking place, particularly in places like Arizona. We hope you found our program as informative as we hope it was with you. We always enjoy bringing our programs to you, and we invite you to be with us again next week at the same time when we'll move to another subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.